And he is even meant to be one of the good guys, you know, the guys who really listen to you first before he exposes you or helps you to be exposed to the world. You know, he's one of the good guys, but do you think it will help you? Can you make something with that? So now we have the audience in here. The questioning. You don't have to answer me. I just give my judgment. Like God judges you.
No, I will answer you.
Yeah, I know you will answer me, but that's okay. Answer if you like. But then we have the audience. Yes. It's not in the computer. It must be in your head if you want to answer me.
No, I was waiting for a question.
Okay, good.
I'll answer you later. Yeah.
All right, later. Fine. Come on, artists. Ken. You don't want to be on this. Ah, yeah, Trista. Come on, Trista.
I have a question about art and politics. And in my experience, well, as Wolfgang was saying the other day, art is something that police protect, and the rest is wallpaper.
I was quoting, nicht saying.
Who said that? Who said that?
You know him from Karlsruhe, he's a Russian guy.
I would like to see something that is something like a political art show, and I think there would be a large amount of contributions in this field. However, I'm wondering about like what are the ramifications of doing something like that? It seems like art museums, they purposely avoid anything that's really kind of going to change people's way of looking at the whole international relations and that sort of thing. So well, I just was curious about your thoughts on that.
Yeah, that depends obviously which kind of, art museums and where they are. So I think, there's a very big difference between the European system and the American system. And obviously, in a sort of a Northern American context, you have very few kind of possibilities right now for political art to be articulated, because as the funding, has become increasingly privatized, and as the museum are, ruled basically by trustees, that is definitely not really happening in Europe. Until very recently, that very much was the case. You had like, you have on the one hand large-scale exhibitions like biennales or documentas, which very well allow political statements to happen. I think particularly in the recent past, documentas have actually quite strongly politicized the art debate. On the other hand, you have this idea of the art center and the Kunsthalle. You have really quite autonomous spaces which are publicly funded, and then you have museums which have besides their historical work, laboratories. Like our Museum in Paris has a sort of a divided double reality, so as to say. It has historical modern or you evoke them, and on a third layer there is this sort of this necessity of museums self-funding their program, and where it will exactly lead is completely undetermined right now, because the changes in Europe are very fast. But there is a kind of a possibility that it's going to adapt more to the American system, or there might be a negotiation for a third way. But it's definitely a lot to do with those current transformations, which change a lot.
Actually, the theorist who that defined art as something the police protects and the rest is wallpaper, his name is Boris Groys. G-R-O-Y-S. Mania.
When Jean Baudrillard was here, he was talking about the aestheticization of life and the banalization of art, and I believe that he saw this as a problem. We were talking about taking the museum context and broadening it a lot. I was wondering if you saw that as something that was an issue, the aestheticization of sort of everyday life, and how you felt changing the context of the museum plays into that issue.
Yeah, I think, it definitely, is not about declaring the whole city, a museum, which is something which, obviously is a tendency very often. But what it's about really is about a permanent negotiation of, a negotiation and an oscillation, and that's something which I think is very different. And I think what obviously it has to do with is that very often, the exhibition happens, both inside and outside, but obviously not the same thing happens inside or outside. So I don't really know what Mr. Baudrillard said. Maybe you have to tell me more so that I can.
But I think his main point was also the interference which will be generated by that. Yeah. You have to say there is a lot. With the success of art exhibitions and the big exhibition comes also a kind of indifference to it. It's not really an event anymore, because everybody screams, it's an event, come to me. So, and there is this aestheticization of other spaces, which takes away what was a provocation, what got our interest in art, because it becomes so widespread, so normal, so Google-like, so it is not really something which gets us anymore.
Yeah, but I don't really observe that. You see, I think what's happening in the field is rather the opposite. You have basically you have at the same time the opposite, because you have actually spaces where experiments can occur, but actually relatively rare. And it's not when you have a certain type of exhibition, as I said earlier, a sort of an event type of exhibition which is sprawling, but which doesn't really produce any work, which is just sort of a fast on and off thing. But there is not that many serious museums right now. I wouldn't really say if I can count 7 places or 10 places on this planet right now where I think substantial work happens, that's a lot. And I don't really think that so I think that's one thing. And then the other thing is that in general terms, I don't really trust what Mr. Baudrillard says about museum. I think he has an expertise, but I don't think that museum are his expertise. And I particularly think since he made his outrageous claim to the French press about 5 years ago that contemporary art is pornography, I even trusted less. I think that is infamous and absolutely doubtful. And has actually been acclaimed by the extreme right wing in France and has actually developed into very reactionary politics. So Mr. Baudrillard, I very much appreciate his recent book and he stays in his expertise, but I do not trust what he says on museography. I doubt it deeply.
He didn't say anything about museums to us actually,
so
and
right.
It was he made. No, but it doesn't matter. It's not about who says what is the case. It's not which celebrity said anything. So the case is that he showed us that he talked about the images. That all these many images, and the art images are just one example of it, are creating indifference. There's no question about that. That is an observation which compared with 20 years ago, etc. It is now really a problem to find something different, to find something that really touches me still. Okay, and you I think that was a good philosophical part of your presentation, when you went after the time issue, and the place issue, that the constraints by a Biennale thing, etc. I think this Thai experience is great. That could be really where art gets interest again, because you have to live it for a while. And in this living, things will appear you would never see, and you just have to finish a certain project in a certain time. No question about it. There also the images are so new, the smells, everything is so new that you cannot really react with indifference to it. Look at the fine cockroaches in Thailand, they are like that, so just like that, Virginia, come on, it's just in your imagination. Yes?
Just to continue the idea of the museums, you said that you will count like 7 places in the planet. I don't know if you're relating these 7 places as 7 museum institutions in the planet. I'm just curious about if you say that maybe 7, this is a really low number for interesting places. I'm curious about this Basel Art Fair, I'm not going. So what's the importance of this Basel Art Fair? If the museums are not, if 7 museums is too much, what's the importance of this place?
Yeah, but I was obviously, it's probably maybe it's 10 or it's 12 or it's 15, it doesn't matter, but there is not, an inflation of places where, knowledge is produced about art, where, for example, let's give you a concrete example. At the moment, there are not that many places in the world who can do a really serious monographic exhibition on a contemporary artist with a big catalogue, and which is not necessarily a practice which is completely present on the art market, Because obviously when you have a position which is completely present on the art market, it's much easier, right? Because then, there is the funding and all of that. But there are not that many other places in the world which can really do a seriously funded exhibition